Howdy folks, it's me, Josh. The year is 1806, and for the past 17 years, Europe had been racked by the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. And as Napoleon continued to deliver beatdown after beatdown, the Holy Roman Emperor, Francis II, ultimately made the decision to abolish the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire, never to return. But what if that changed? What if, in an alternate timeline, the Holy Roman Empire had survived? So first of all, before we can even ask that question, we need to understand the course of events that led to the ultimate collapse of the empire. As you'd probably already know, the Holy Roman Empire was not like the other states of Europe. While other kingdoms, such as France especially, had largely consolidated control into a central government, the Holy Roman Empire was notorious for its decentralization, being divided into numerous different smaller states. And the reason for that immense internal division was because what the empire embodied was something totally different from what the other states of Europe did. The Holy Roman Empire, true to its name, was meant to be a universal monarchy over the Christian states of Europe and the direct continuation of the Western Roman Empire, with the emperors even taking the title Emperor of the Romans. And though, of course, not every Christian state in Europe would owe fealty directly to the Holy Roman Emperor, this idea of the emperor being a monarch over monarchs and the direct successor to the ancient Roman emperors would not only explain the immense division inside the empire, as it wasn't meant to be a unitary state, but also lead to its downfall. After the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon, the Holy Roman Empire would see a series of defeats at the hands of the French, as France would seek to push much of its influence eastward into Germany. This first really made itself apparent when, after the French annexed the lands west of the Rhine, they demanded that the princes who had lost territory be compensated. And after a process known as German mediatization, the empire would be completely restructured, particularly with Baden, Württemberg, and Bavaria gaining the most territory. And since these states were already kinda sick of the French ransacking their lands, and since the French had initiated the process which led to their territorial acquisitions, they all figured, hey, why don't we just side with France? Might as well get in with the winning team, plus they'll stop ransacking us. Who needs the emperor? Napoleon, meanwhile, decided to hold a big fancy party where he put on a big fancy crown and called himself emperor. The Holy Roman Emperor, Francis II, though, started freaking out, seeing this as a threat to his prestige, as he and Napoleon were now on the same level, and so responded by saying, well, you may be an emperor, but I'm super double emperor, and named himself Emperor of Austria as well, maintaining the preeminence of the Holy Roman title over either of them. However, during Napoleon's coronation, he began heavily modeling himself after Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor, even making replicas of his crown and sword, and so Francis began worrying that Napoleon was going to try to claim the Holy Roman title for himself, leaving him as merely a lowly emperor, and Napoleon becoming super double emperor. Then, after the French victory in the War of the Third Coalition, seeing Austria be completely humiliated at the Battle of Austerlitz, Napoleon was able to consolidate his influence in Germany, and alongside his chums in Bavaria, Baden, and Württemberg, Napoleon created the Confederation of the Rhine, as its member states would secede from the Holy Roman Empire to join this new state. The French then, shortly after, sent an ultimatum to Francis that he abdicate the Holy Roman throne, and he knew that there was no way to get around this. But in order to keep Napoleon from seizing the title for himself, and to prevent future wars, on August 6, 1806, Francis would not only abdicate, but abolish the Holy Roman Empire outright. And so, a 1,000-year-old empire would come to an end, and Europe would never look the same again. But what if that changed? What if, in an alternate timeline, the Holy Roman Empire had survived? So the main reason why Francis had dissolved the empire was out of fear that Napoleon would attempt to seize the title himself and to avoid future wars. However, Not only is there zero evidence that Napoleon actually wanted the title of Holy Roman Emperor in the first place, but the abolition wouldn't prevent future wars, nor did Francis technically even have the authority to abolish the empire in the first place. Now, though hindsight is 2020, looking back, there ultimately wasn't any actual real reason to abolish the empire outside of just fear. So, because of this, all we have to do is just keep Francis from abolishing the title, perhaps being persuaded against doing so by one of his advisors, and keeping the empire intact. And so, as Francis abdicates the title of Holy Roman Emperor, the title is then passed back to the electors as the empire enters into an interregnum, awaiting for a new emperor to be elected. Or rather, it would have if all the electors hadn't been forced to dip and join the Confederation of the Rhine. So, though the Holy Roman Empire would continue to exist on paper, it would really cease to exist as a functioning body for this time. The fear was that if this were to happen, Napoleon would run in and claim the title for himself and restore the empire in the Confederation. However, as I mentioned earlier, outside of some vague comments comparing himself to the ancient Roman emperors, Napoleon likely didn't have any actual ambition to claim the title of Holy Roman Emperor. It's likely that he saw it as incompatible with his own title, Emperor of the French, and so didn't want to trade in his own title for the Holy Roman one. And so, with the Holy Roman Empire being essentially wiped off the map, an empire with no emperor, with only Austria and Prussia remaining as members, the Napoleonic Wars would continue as they had in our timeline, with Napoleon ending up being defeated. And after the fall of Napoleon, the Holy Roman Empire technically remained standing. After the end of the wars, since there wouldn't be the threat of Napoleon trying to seize the title himself, there would be no reason to destroy the Holy Roman Empire at this point. And so, as a result, though some states, like Bavaria, would protest, the Holy Roman Empire would be restored to its approximate boundaries that it had before Napoleon started messing around. But, of course, since Francis had abdicated his throne, and no other emperor had been elected, the empire still wouldn't have had an emperor. So, upon its reconstitution, another election would be held as Francis II returns to his position as Holy Roman Emperor. And, with that, the Holy Roman Empire re-emerges. So, what exactly would this change? With the empire still remaining intact, there wouldn't be a push to unite Germany per se, as Germany would already be united under the empire. But instead, there would have been a great push for reform, as liberals and nationalists would want to transform it into a modern nation-state akin to those such as France and Britain. However, the traditional ruling class would push back against this, wanting to maintain the traditional order. And so, similarly to our timeline, Francis would be faced with a decision. Either he could prioritize his position as Holy Roman Emperor, strengthening his position over Germany, but at the expense of his other territories, or he could prioritize his position as Emperor of Austria, focusing on his control over his family's lands. And given his actions in our timeline, and the general Habsburg prioritization of their own dynasty, he would almost certainly choose the latter, and as a result, would side with the conservatives within the empire, wanting to retain its decentralized nature. And so, this would start some sort of parallel to the German question of our timeline, as German nationalists would also be faced with the decision. Either they could try to force Austria to focus on Germany and give up their other lands, or force Austria out of Germany. And this question would end up being answered in 1848. As the revolutions of 1848 sweep across Europe, we would very likely see some kind of revolution in Germany occur, as revolutionaries rise up in revolt against Francis's successor, who would have been Ferdinand IV, in favor of a stronger German state. And similarly to our timeline, the weak Ferdinand likely would be swept aside in favor of his nephew, Franz Joseph, as Austria is faced with a war on 3 fronts in Germany, Hungary, and Italy. And though the Austrians had barely managed to pull through the revolutions of 1848 in our timeline due to Russian support against Hungary, this would have been an impossible situation for Austria, as Franz Joseph is likely forced to recognize Hungarian independence in order to retain control of other regions, also allowing him to take up real control over Germany. And though the liberals in Germany would have pushed for a more liberal state, Franz Joseph would end up reforming the Holy Roman Empire into a centralized state with Austria at its head, satisfying the nationalists in Germany but leaving many liberals discontent. But as the Holy Roman Empire strengthens its control over Germany, the empire pushes on into the future, becoming a dominant force in Europe once again. I want to give a big thanks to Andrew Saladino and all other patrons who have supported my channel. And if you feel compelled to donate, make sure to head on over to the Patreon linked in the description. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to stick around for more. And hey, you could also, maybe, subscribe or something. So that's it for today's video. Well, till next time, see ya.